Hello, and welcome to another Baron Earl show. I am particularly excited because I like it when we don't just talk to creators, but we do talk to other people who know about other aspects of the comic. Uh, I don't know what do you want to call it, market and everything. And actually, my son. This is probably going to be one of our first episodes. My son watches because he's very much into the collectability side and the sales side and all that stuff. So yeah, he will definitely be watching more for Gary than for me. And he will be very interested. But I know Mike has known Gary for a while, so I'll let Mike introduce him.
Well, I haven't seen Gary in years, but he was active on the scene when I lived in Madison, and of course attended the distributors conventions. Gary is a pioneer in the comic shop, independent comic shops. He started his first shop uh, in 1978,
Yeah,
and
hard to believe it was that long ago, Mike.
I know, I know. And then he extended that into a six-store chain. They were called Moondogs, and they were cultural monuments at the time uh, because the independent comics store came into being because of people like Gary who loved comics and had trouble getting them, and the old distribution system was failing. You can't get all your comics at a drugstore anymore. They only handled a handful, and the two comic fan wanted the latest stuff as soon as it came out. So, hence the rise of the comic store. And Gary's been an advisor to the Overstreet Price Guide since 1983. He's an expert on comics, rare comics, what they're worth, how you can find them, which are which. Uh, he's also was a partner with the Chicago Comic Con, which under his leadership grew to become the second largest comic con in the country. They sold that con to Wizard Magazine in 1997. Excuse me. Um, Gary founded the Direct Line Group, an advocate for retailers as they sought to have a seat at the table when publishers and distributors were making deals and forming policies. Uh, he started manufacturing special protective plastic sleeves for comics. He was a pioneer in that area too. Uh, these days we have bags unlimited, but back in those days he had comic covers. He sold a lot of those comic covers. I have a bunch of them too. I've been collecting them. And, Gary now is as he's semi-retired, isn't that right? Although you're still a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm retired from actual work, but I've sold so many comics over the years to people who were maybe teenagers or in their early 20s, and now they're downsizing, they're retired, and they're trying to figure out how do they maximize the value of their collections, and so they come back to me. It's kind of full circle, and it's great. I mean, I buy and sell an entire collection, bits and pieces, or I act as their agent if they have important, expensive comics.
Are you
So,
buying back any of the books you sold them 30 years ago?
it's funny you should say that, Mike. I just had an Amazing Spider-Man 129. Guy calls me up. He goes, Gary, you can't, you sold me these comics 40 years ago. And so I come over to his house, and there he's got a Spider-Man #1 in the bag with my tag on it. It says Moondogs, and it was $9. Now, Spider-Man 129 is the first appearance of the Punisher, and in near mint to mint, it's about 30 grand. This particular copy was a VG, but I still paid him. I think it was 3,900 for that $9 purchase that he made 40 years ago. So that was pretty cool.
Do you still have that book or did you sell it?
Oh no, I turn these things over right away. I don't have any inventory. I don't have a physical brick and mortar store. If you look behind me, you see all this kind of stuff. It's just things are transient now. They come in and they go out. But there's so many different outlets to sell nowadays. I mean, I sell privately, one-on-one, but the bulk of what I sell are in auctions now.
Where are the auctions held? Are they online?
Yeah, there's eBay, of course. I kind of stay away from eBay for the most part because there's just a lot of fraud and weirdos out there.
Yeah.
So, but if depending on what the items are, Heritage is a great place for selling. Specific stuff. Like I have some Peanuts originals for sale right now on Heritage.
Nice.
I have some Silver Age Marvels for sale right now on Comic Link. And so, I kind of spread the wealth around depending on what the particular item is.
Well, these days it seems that the industry is in free fall, and the established publishers don't know whether to shit or go blind. What is your take on the future of comics?
Well, Mike, you've been writing comics for all this time, over 40 years yourself. So, what it's. I don't know how anybody can make any money anymore in comics. I mean, if you just look at the bottom line, I mean, look, from retailing, there is really no. I don't know. I guess there's distribution, but all it is basically freight forwarding from a warehouse. A publisher's warehouse to some place,
right?
And then even if you're a publisher or creator, how do you connect with people nowadays? Well, everybody go, well, the internet's so easy, but how do you monetize that to the point where you can do digital comics and earn a living? I'm not sure how that works, but all the comic book shops.
Do you know who Eric July is?
No.
Eric July is a popular YouTube guy. He's got thousands and thousands of followers. And last year he announced he was going to publish his own first comic, a graphic novel called Isom. And in a month's time,
I do know about that guy, and that was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard of. I mean, how can somebody raise that kind of money unless there's more to it than?
Well, he has millions of viewers and stuff too, so that's what really.
But there's a political slant to his stuff too, right? I mean
there is to him. I don't know about the comics though.
I've never seen. Well, I did see one show because he did it about me. But Eric July is conservative, and if you want a big following on the internet, you got to go political. This is what I've figured out, that if you preach hard left or hard right, you're going to get a lot of followers who are seeking affirmation. I think that was the key to his success.
Yeah. I mean, that Fox connection he had too, I think, was something that really boosted him. But but he's an outlier. I mean, I can't look at him and say that's the future of digital comics, or and plus it was a $99 retail or something like that, or $39.
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't think the people that are backing him, and they're backing a lot of these other crowdfunders, are not interested in digital. They say, well, they don't say, but comics will never die because the people who like them love them, and for them, a comic is something you hold in your hands. There's a special magic that occurs when you're looking at a page and it's well done and the story's well done, and you enter into a fully real three-dimensional world, and you don't get that online.
Yeah, I hear you, Mike. We always loved well, I think as Scott McCloud said, what happens in between the panels is as important as what happens, in the panel you're actually looking at.
Are you aware of other dealers around the country with whom you might be competing?
Well, yeah, I mean, all the same guys that were around. The thing is now there's so many more new, younger guys getting into it, into the vintage stuff, that it makes it. I think there's always going to be somebody around wanting to sell old comics, and and it still goes back. I don't care how much you want to put a professional spin on it. It still goes back to you want to buy that Action Comics #1 for $0.10 at a garage sale. Okay, I mean it all comes down to comics are still not considered valuable by some people, even though all the notoriety, everything that's happened. People still will go into an estate sale or a garage sale or someplace and find valuable comics for pennies. Yep. And so because that exists still in some form, there's always going to be dealers. There's always going to be somebody who is going to want to get into this and see if they can make some money at it. Someone like me, people don't have time to invest like I have invested in all these years to get to this point where I'm a nationally known expert on things. I mean, you go into the Overstreet Guide and you'll see a paragraph about how I provide pricing information for ash can editions. Now, what's an ash can? Well, an ash can was created to secure the trademark for the titles of books back in the golden age. So I owned, because I bought them from the retired president of DC Comics, Sal Harrison, back in 1985, but I owned the actual ash can editions for Action Comics, Superman, Superwoman, Superboy, Supergirl. I mean, and these are incredible rarities where only 1 and 2 or 3 copies exist today.
Wow.
And, and so I would track the sales of all this stuff. I would educate people. I wrote articles for years and years and years for Overstreet, for Krause Publications, for, the Buyer's Guide. I mean, you name it, I wrote articles to try to educate collectors on what ash cans were. People don't have time to do this anymore. They don't want to spend the time to learn about things. They want to be able to go to YouTube and see a video and find out exactly what they need to know and then move on with their lives. So, are there competitors out there? But they're all good guys. I mean, they're guys who love comics, who made this their career, and they're still doing it. I mean, Richie Evans down in Houston, at Bedrock Comics, he's a collector of the highest order. He's a retailer of the highest order. And, he's just a great guy. And he's been doing this for, 30 years. Al Stoltz is still doing stuff in the Maryland area, or actually he might be in Florida now. I mean, but these guys have been around forever. And in fact, the Leibowitz family, Bill's kids out at Golden Apple in California. Mike, I'm sure you've been there at some point.
Yes, I was many years ago.
Sure, and Bill and I were very close, and he's been gone now for about 15 years, but the family still is keeping things going. But because it's so hard to make money in brick and mortar comics, I mean, there's no new stores that I see opening anywhere. Certainly
there are a couple that have opened up here in Fort Collins, believe it or not.
There are a few, great. But not like there used to be.
No, it's a very small store, very small footprint.
Yeah. What when you're valuing stuff, I know there's a lot of resources and things out there, but how do you decide like what you think something is worth? Well, Jeff, when you said there's resources, there really is. Okay, but you have to spend the time to do a little homework. You have to do a little bit of I mean, if you have old comic books and you're giving them away or selling them for pennies, I'm not saying you're an idiot, but you're lazy. You're really lazy. Okay. Yeah. Because there are a lot of resources out there.
But Mike said the market is in free fall before. Well, he wasn't referring to the vintage comics market,
Right.
but that's also been in free fall since for the last year. I mean, prices are way down on a lot of books. I mean, even Captain America #1 in 7.0, which is a real nice copy, sold last year for 315,000. One just sold a week ago for 201,000. I mean, when you're off 30% on a blue chip comic like that, that can raise some eyebrows.
Yeah. What do you think that's economy related, or is it just lack of interest?
Well, no, what was the sale of 315,000 was
Right.
the one that
Right.
was the one that was unreal.
Right.
Because you had all this COVID money. I mean, you guys probably have heard about all the
Yeah.
COVID bump that all the collectible fields got. I mean,
Yep.
not just comics, but I mean, guys were paying $600,000 for Michael Jordan rookie cards.
Yep.
That are worth maybe a quarter of that. And but that's what happened when all this hysteria and the fear of missing out really happened during that, the second half of 20, all during 21, and then basically the first half of 22. And then things really kind of hit the wall. And they're still falling. I mean, just, blue chips like Amazing Fantasy 15 are, having, they're not going to hit those 2021 highs for a long time, and because they keep falling. Maybe it's 10%, 5% a month, but that adds up over time.
With bank failures looming, you might think that these collectibles will again start increasing in price.
Yeah, you know what? People look to non-traditional forms of investment during times like that. Mike, you're exactly right. I've been the fortunate recipient of a lot of that kind of investment over the years, and where people are, look to me specifically for certain items, but they can buy them, everywhere now. Whereas before, you used the relationship in the old days of collector and dealer was much different than it is now, because so many collectors buy at auctions now, as opposed to having that one-on-one relationship with a dealer, so that when something came in, that collector got first opportunity to buy it. That really doesn't exist anymore. I mean, at least not to the degree that it used to. So, but Mike, it could happen.
Do you know Barry Dutter?
Dutter?
Barry Dutter. Dutte.
I know of him. I'm trying to recall why I know of
we're
him.
Facebook friends, and he regularly posts his business there. And Barry buys and resells old comic collections, and he goes into great detail about how he finds them and how he acquires them. And a lot, of course, it's just posted in personal ads or classified ads, or classified ads on the internet by people who have inherited these collections and aren't really collectors themselves, and they don't know what they're worth, but they just want to get rid of them.
Mike, I've done a lot of podcasts on these, for seniors, baby boomer ones,
right.
boomers, where I'm basically asked to come on and explain to families of collectors how not to get taken, and my brother, my son, my husband was a collector, and now he's passed away. How do I sell his collection and get a fair price? That is my number one customer, is that right now. I should say my source for back issues is the families of collectors who have passed away.
Right.
I mean, I'm 72, and I did not buy FF1. I was 10 years old when FF1 came out. I don't recall buying that, but I bought Flash 123, the Flash of Two Worlds, which started the multiverse and stuff of
Wow.
comics. I bought those off the rack. Amazing Fantasy 15, I bought. It was 62. So my golden age, we all have golden ages. My golden age was, basically 1962 to 1968. And after that, cars and girls and stuff, But during that period of time, I bought all the Marvels, I bought all the DCs, I bought everything that I could find. And I sold my collection during the last 2 years when the market was going crazy because I had a couple of health scares, and so it became am I going to have my wife worry about this stuff
Yeah.
if I pass? So it made sense to sell and not put the burden on her, and so there's but at the same time, because there's so much selling going on right now, like this, the market, it kind of depresses the market too, because there's so much great material on the market all at one time.
Right. Yeah, I know a few people around where I am where they sell on Whatnot, and they do probably $1,000 a day, or I mean but they're constantly looking for stuff. They're constantly going around and like I think you kind of alluded to at one point, like they'll buy big collections and stuff because they know that a lot of the people are not going to go through the 15 long boxes or whatever, and they're hoping that there's like at least one gem in there, or at least a couple things that are key collector kind of things that'll really make it worth their while, and most of the time there is. You just gotta, like you said, do your research, know what you're looking for.
I'm really the poster boy for this. Okay. I mean, because I have all this legacy, this long legacy. And I actually have a partner who came to me and said, Gary, let us create a website for you. Yeah. We're going to do all the work. You don't have to do anything. You have to put up some content every once in a while, but you're good at that. You've got all these archives and everything else, but we'll create the website. We'll do everything, and we'll split the deals that come in. So if you go to moondogbuyscomics.com, you'll see a complete website on how easy it is to buy comics, sell your comics to me. And I have great content on there. I don't know if you guys might recall, but back in 1993, 94, I had the first radio show, comic book radio show called Moondog's Pop Culture Radio Hour. And we it was live radio we had 35 episodes. It was live radio Saturday mornings at noon, 11 to noon in Chicago here. And I tried to syndicate it, couldn't do it. It was way ahead of its time. It would have been a perfect, internet radio kind of thing. Or a podcast. We kind of consider it the first podcast, comic book podcast, but that content is on there. If you want to listen to cool. Steve Rude being interviewed the week before Marvels came out, and what it meant, what this was going to mean to his career and stuff. Did I say Rude? I'm sorry, Steve.
Alex Ross.
I meant Alex Ross.
Yeah.
It's easy to confuse the two.
Yeah.
Well, they
both paint
a little balding, but we had Alex on that show, right before Marvel's shipped. We had a Star Trek show. We had with all the living members were on the radio at the same time. We had Tiny Tim. We used to have a lot of pop culture stuff. Mr. T. I mean, you name it, we had it on there. And those shows are now available at moondogbuyscomics.com. So I got a call today. Somebody came to the website and said, "Hey, I'm in Urbana, Illinois, which is about 2 hours from me, and his brother passed away, and he's got the comics and he wants to sell them. So he's looking for a place to do it. So
yeah, and I did check out your website, and I will say yes, there's a ton of great information on there, and so people should definitely check it out. I did want to ask you because I've seen this, and I know just from talking to a lot of comic store friends of mine and stuff that, and I'm wondering how you dealt with it, or if you had to deal with it. But the kind of the temptation to gamble or whatever with comics, or to be able to kind of like balance like the fanboy side and the business side when you're actually doing the business work. Was that kind of an easy transition for you as you got into the business, or did you have to really resist some things or make some big mistakes?
Well, mistakes. Jeff, it's really funny. I always considered everything I was selling is inventory.
Right.
And because of that, I never had the emotional attachment to it. I mean, I would buy a collection. It'd be FF1 Up and Spider-Man 1 Up. I mean, I owned all those comics back when I was, a teenager. So the idea that I owned them at one time, the idea of getting them again and then putting them away,
that helped.
Really, no, I was trying to build a business. I mean, my goal was to have a business that would survive me. And in comics, that just wasn't happening. I mean, you had the small little comic book dealer who maybe lived in the back room or had, a small place. And it was very personal to him, and it was his expression of what he wanted to do in comics. Mine was different. I wanted to create a business that would grow, and I wanted to create a business that would survive me, that if I passed away, it wouldn't just crumble and my wife would sell off the pieces. I got a blank screen here, guys.
We can still see you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep talking.
Here. Take our word for it.
I can hear you guys, but I don't see any of you. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. Must have been something. But so I would buy these incredible collections. Like the Windy City collection is one of the greatest comic book collections ever found, and it was right here in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And had I kept some of these books, like the Marvel Comics #1, had I said to myself, you know what, maybe this will be my pension. Maybe this will be, my retirement. So I'm going to put this book away in a safe deposit box. And maybe that perfect copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 that I bought from a guy, I'm gonna add that to the safe deposit box and just keep those. Many dealers do this. They have, when something extraordinary comes in, they keep it. That wasn't me. As soon as I got it, I sold it and reinvested those profits in building a business. That was what it was. That Marvel #1, I bought it for $12,000 in 1986. Sold it 2 years later for $22,000, a record price.
Wow.
It sold 14 years later for $120,000. It sold 4 years after that for $190,000, and in the November of 2019, it sold for $1.26 million.
Wow.
So had I kept a few things, Jeff, it would have been absolutely a smart move.
Oh yeah.
But I wanted to build a business, and I did. I went from 1 store to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, and then ultimately, got to sell it to a company that Mike once wrote for. First comics, first publishing. And
nice.
I'm the
You know,
guy. I'm
there's
the guy. I'm the retailer that when you talk to guys, I'm the guy who cashed out. I'm the guy
Right.
I'm the guy who's the luckiest guy you're going to run into.
First Comics is still around.
Yeah, I heard about that. Mike, is Kenny Levin still involved in it?
Yeah, he's the head, but they mostly publish boutique books with the eye towards getting them made into film.
Mm-hmm.
But
Have you done anything?
he's got some Badger stuff with them, I think.
Well, they own Badger,
Well, they own Badger
unfortunately.
now. Yeah.
But I have written a new Badger graphic novel, and we're trying to get Ken's attention so we can go ahead. Uh, but Ken is very difficult to get a hold of. And it's not just me, he's that way with everybody. Uh, we may proceed anyway. I've taken pains that there's nothing in there that would offend him, and it's a really good story, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Ken and I go way back too. So, if though I've lost touch with him, last time I saw him was at I think a C2E2 convention here in Chicago about 6 or 7 years ago.
Do you
Nice.
read comics these days?
Mike, the way they look, even the lettering, it's. I started reading FF 4 years ago when they came out with a new #1 again. I said, okay, I'm going to try it out, and I enjoyed it. I read, all 48 issues and really, of this and liked it. I was a little, I don't know, a little out there even for the FF, but I read it and I enjoyed it. And then they got a new creative team with a new #1, and it sucked. I mean,
Yeah.
it just sucked. I said, my God, look at this. This guy's got a copy machine, and he's just, copying panel for panel. And I mean, I don't know. It was horrible. I couldn't. I finished the first issue. I don't know how, and I that was it. I'm done. I can't. I just can't. But I've been reading some old stuff. I just picked up Arkham Asylum. I'm reading. Started
cool.
reading that again. Things.
I think because I keep up with this stuff, and I am aside from being into writing, I'm also kind of into the graphic design side. So I appreciate like the logos and the lettering and all that stuff too. And I think between Marvel and DC and like all the 80 books or whatever it is that they put out a month right now, I think there's only like 2 or 3 that are hand lettered, and everything else is just totally computer and just typed in now. But
really,
yeah, there's actually and it's typically what it is there is like a quote superstar writer, superstar artist, somebody who's very popular who can throw their weight around, and they say, I want this letterer on the book, and he wants that letterer because he knows the guy's gonna hand letter it. And that's the way. I mean, if it wasn't for them kind of throwing their weight, there probably wouldn't be any at the big 2 that are hand lettered like that. But yeah, it looks so much better when it's hand lettered.
So who's the Ira Schnapp of today's comics? Ira Schnapp is the guy who created all those wonderful Golden Age and Silver Age logos for DC. Okay, yeah. He's the guy who created all the logos. He did all the created the fonts that the DC fonts for all their ad pages and stuff during the Silver Age and Golden Age. I mean, who is it? Is it some guy sitting with a computer goofing around?
Yeah, it kind of it depends. Yeah, they'll go through phases. Like actually, and I told Chris Cross this when I was talking with him, because they've been bringing back the Milestone stuff, and some of the Milestone stuff that's been there, which is actually really hilarious because I really ripped on one of the logos, and it happened to be one that he had to make really fast, and he normally was not a logo guy, but the and I don't recall who it is, but the guy who I mean, I'm sure it will look very digital to like you and Mike, but the guy who has been doing a lot of the lettering and logos for the Milestone books is like really detailed and really sharp. Like it's not just like digital. He puts a lot of extra work into it, a lot of style, and very, very detailed, like a lot of layers. And I mean, just really, really high quality, time consuming work. And he's kind of been brought over to do some other DC stuff now because his stuff has gone over so well. But they'll go through phases, like with the recent relaunch thing they did of the X-Men that I like the concept of it. But I did think one of the smart things they did, even though everybody's minimalist these days, or what they call bold minimalist. And Hello Muller is this guy he's the one who designed all of the logos for all of the X-Men things and anything related to it, which is great because it makes a cohesive, presentation, and it's very easy and for the fans and stuff. And actually those have sold incredibly. They've actually sold well in stores, but they've sold really well on like Comixology and places like that. And I think because of the whole cohesive nature of it, they've been more apt to buying like collections and omnibuses and stuff like that, because it's presented and they had kind of an overseeing, because I think it was like Jonathan Hickman or something was like overseeing the whole line. And so there was like one direction, one voice, one theme. A lot of it was taking place on this like mutant island and everything. And it's just like all the mutants were like there, basically because they're at odds with humanity and everything. It was kind of like just taking everything to the next level with the whole mutants and humans and stuff. But I think, but that really helped. I was curious. I wish they would have, Marvel decided it wasn't worth the money. What they originally wanted to do was, and I'm sure you've seen this with different things, they kind of wanted, like he also wanted to make this stuff available as a less expensive, like kind of anthology edition. So it would be like lower quality paper and stuff, but like you would be able to buy like the latest X-Men comic, the latest New Mutants comic, the latest, like all the different things in like one volume, but like more, almost sold more where like magazines and things were, and just do it on cheaper printing, even if they wanted to do black and white or something, but just to give like a ton of content to the people, and they were going to do it.
Sounds like Japanese manga. I mean, that's what the Japanese manga was. They just go ahead and give you a phone book every month of everything, right?
Yeah, and
cheap
that's
cheap as you can get.
Yeah, and because Hickman is actually a pretty smart business guy, and he almost got Marvel to go for it, and then and there's stuff that I don't agree with Hickman, but there's some things like that I love it when people will actually try to come up with a solution and do things and try to make noise and get people interested in the medium and stuff like that. And it stinks because it is more like Marvel or DC or whatever has to be the bigger to be able to put the money behind something like that. But then they typically will bail out either early or late. But especially since like the 2008 kind of market issues, like everybody kind of plays it very safe when it comes to betting on investing on things, which is obviously bringing it back to you and making wise investments with the things you do. I did have a quick question, just because I don't want to forget about it. But I had I can't remember which one it was, but like Amazing Fantasy 14 or 15 or what. I tried to put it out of my mind because I came home one day. That was the only valuable comic I had when I was in middle school, and I got it from a friend who's was a big time comic fan. And I came home, and my step grandmother had given my baby sister, that comic to draw on because it was the oldest. So she drew. So I came home to that issue with crayons on the cover and every single page.
Oh my!
Is there?
Do you still have it? You still have it?
No. I think I
That
threw
could
it
be worth
away.
a fortune.
I was gonna say, like, how much? Like, if there are people that have things like that, like, how much can those things be worth, even if they're
Okay. Here's the thing.
yeah,
And depending on the extent of the crayon, and it
right,
sounds like a lot. Okay,
yeah,
that can be removed professionally now.
right,
That crayon. Okay, and then without it, and I believe crayon can be removed without it getting a restored label. Okay,
right,
and but even with the crayon on it, today somebody would pay 5-10 grand for that.
yeah.
You know,
I mean,
because
that's what
yeah.
I've learned now, and I'm like, dang it! It's like I should have kept. I was so angry at the time, but it's like, but I've seen that now where where there's half, and that's one thing that that I've seen, and just for anybody that's interested in this stuff, and you think people that are interested in having older comics, or they have a certain character, like I have friends that like love the old like Fawcett Captain Marvel and stuff like that, and other specific characters that they really like. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize, but I have friends at comic stores and other people that will do this. They will carry low quality, very old books because they're affordable for
Mhm.
people to grab, so they can have
Oh,
them
absolutely.
in their
But
collection.
that used to be a there was always somebody who wanted to buy an old comic.
Yeah,
There would be a price because somebody wanted to read it. Okay,
right,
and so so like if you had a Tales of Suspense 81 or 82, which is a nothing book, it doesn't have, Tales of Suspense 80 has a classic Kirby Red Skull cover, but 81 or 82 is nothing. I mean, it's just a continuity thing, right? And
right,
so it would have a Cap story, and then it'd have the Iron Man story, and no big deal. But in VG, that book is like $5. All right,
right,
um, but now, because of all these compilations and websites, and you can poke around and find, you can read anything you want. You can read it, and sometimes now there's books that really almost like nobody would buy. I
right,
mean, it's really amazing that there are comics now that have so little value, and
yeah,
that used to have some value. Okay, I
yeah,
coined the term. That, and I explain this to sellers when they come to me and they have comics and they want $1 million, and I said, well, all comics have value, but not all comics are valuable. And so, your Amazing Fantasy is going to have value, and it's going to be substantial. But
right,
if you had an Amazing Adult Fantasy 14, the issue before,
right,
and the cover's got a coupon clipped out of it, that's not valuable,
right.
in any sense. Hey, you know what I did read that I really liked is this Alex Ross's FF book that came out last year. You have it there in the back, I
I have
thought.
it right behind me.
Yeah.
He's talking
Now
about
that was
this.
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Did
yeah.
he
That-
write it?
I'm sorry.
Did Alex write it?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, he
he
did.
did. What did he not do in
Yeah,
that, Jeff?
yeah. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. He did most of it, and it's more of like a pop art style from him or whatever. It's a
Yeah, right.
different coloring tones, slightly different style. I mean, I mean, he's done some like inked stuff before that is not so painted, but it's definitely a different style. It's an interesting like color palette and stuff. I think it's cool. It's funny with like the movies and TV shows. Like I like I really like the old Fantastic Four stuff. It's hard because I'm a big time sci-fi fan, so like I love like going hard sci-fi, really, really like cool like that. But at the same time, like I'm like, man, I would love to see like a 1950 a quality like 1950s or whatever Fantastic Four style like movie on the big screen rather than just making it modern. I would
Hmm.
I would kind of like I would kind of dig that, or even like a TV show or something that they did kind of a retro future kind of thing. Because I mean I don't know, like I just there's something that I really liked about that aesthetic and stuff that makes me think about that with the Fantastic Four. But I don't know. They don't listen to me, so it doesn't matter. But I think, see, I do think, and sometimes it has been with some of the movies and TV shows and things like that. They're smart because they pick up on the more popular stories or whatever from the comics, and then other times they'll just do whatever, or they'll take bits.
Can't
I
hear you.
lost you. Oh, I hear Mike now.
This happens from time to time.
Well, it's live.
Yeah,
These
I can
things
barely
happen.
work this computer.
When we were doing the radio show, that was live radio, and boy, I tell you, we held our breath every week.
Well, just trying to get back on sound. Uh, do you know who Ethan Van Sciver is?
Again, that's another name that I'm familiar with, but I don't. He's a writer.
No, he's primarily an artist. He used to draw Green Lantern for DC, and then he
Hmm.
quit to publish his own book, Cyberfrog. And now Ethan had a large following as well, and he raised over $1 million for the first Cyberfrog book. And you know who Billy Tucci and Graham Nolan are.
Of course, yeah.
Well, those guys are crowdfunding their own books too, and they're routinely in six figures. In
Wow,
fact,
God bless that.
I think Billy for his She Omnibus raised $250,000.
Well, I just
Yeah.
helped out. I think it was the Dave Stevens book that's coming out. I threw some dough in on that one, and also Joe Jusko's Marvel Masterpieces
Yep.
book. They asked me to do a recollection for that book too, which was kind of cool. When he was on a tour, the Marvel Masterpieces tour, and did a stop in Chicago. I kind of helped arrange the tour. We did all these DLG stores, the Direct Line Group. We did five stores in 6 days from coast to coast. I mean, poor guy was like dragging, but he did it.
Did you go along on that tour?
No, I just was. I just helped arrange, get all the stops arranged for Joe and Marvel. So.
What other stuff have you been involved with aside from like the Comic-Con and the store? I imagine quite a few things.
Well, I mean, it's I sent a small bio to Mike just to kind of jog his memory on some stuff, in the sense of, like the comic bags business. I mean, a lot of people don't, I mean, today, I mean, there were no brand names on comic covers, in the protection supplies business, and so I mean, I'm kind of a marketing guy, and so I created brand names for everything. And Capital City, who again, Mike and I worked for these guys at one point. I mean, of course, Mike was the creator, but I was their first warehouse manager in Chicago in 1982 or 81, whatever that was. Wow. But I was fortunate enough to make these things, make bags domestically, as opposed to China and
Right.
Brazil and all these other places where people were importing bags. I was making it domestically, and so they were always available. And my two biggest customers were Capital City and Diamond. And because it was kind of like, let's make Gary happy. We'll buy his bags because he's the biggest retailer in Chicago and Midwest or whatever. So he'll give us a lot of business. So it's kind of like the symbiotic thing. I mean, as everybody, I was giving them a lot of business. They were giving me a lot of business, and everybody was happy. But to sell 800 million comic bags is I mean, when you think about 800 million of anything,
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? And then I sold the trademarks to Diamond in 1996, and they didn't do anything with it. I mean, it's like they didn't know what they had, and they just let it kind of die off, I think. And nowadays, everything you see is, I don't know, Comic Pro maybe or something. I don't
Bags Unlimited.
Well, I think there is like a Comic Pro thing or something like that.
I'm not sure what it is.
Do you follow Milt on icv2.com?
I still get Milton stuff, but I don't look at it like I used to. It used to be first thing I'd look at, but I don't. The business of comics now is it's not even a business to me. It's like some just crazy bunch of like big companies and little companies, but there's like, I don't know, there's no in between anymore. There's no there's and there's nothing personal. There used to be personalities in comics. Steve Jeppy, come on, Mike, you remember Milton and John Davis. I mean, these guys, as distributors, Chuck Rosansky, Chuck is still around, but
he's right down the street from me.
Right down the street from you, yeah. And his health hasn't been good lately. He fell and hurt himself, but he's
I'm sorry to hear that.
He's back up.
Enormous.
Yeah, he's
probably
back
the biggest
up.
Comic book store in the world.
Yep, it sure is. But there were real personalities. There was and like I'm blowing my own horn here, but I always figured make Moondogs as personal as possible, so that there was always a connection that the media would be interested in. Who's the guy behind Moondogs, kind of thing. But I don't see that anymore. I don't see who do you go to right now if you wanted the media to talk? Who's the number one comic book expert? I mean, you had guys in every town. You can go to Bill Leibowitz. You can go to, Buddy Saunders. You could go to Chuck Rosansky, Gary Culpa, Steve Jeppy. I mean, there were guys, and that I don't see that anymore.
Well, you should know this, Gary. Everybody's an expert now. I mean, you can literally watch a YouTube video and everything. I mean, it's very much a fast food mentality with a lot of people these days.
But I watch these young influencers talk about comics, and they don't impress me. I don't see the depth. I don't see any depth there on guys who really understand, the art form, understand why it's important that this, it's a native, original American art form. It started here, and because of that, you should take the time and make the effort to learn about all this stuff and why it's important. And I just don't see that. I don't see that depth at all.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, I think that they would, because I see that too, and I'm like, they would appreciate the stuff more, and you would probably be able to sell it to them better if they actually were really kind of falling in love with it and really understanding, the different aspects of the way that they're, and even just through the it's just been interesting just seeing all the different changes with the color processes and all those different time
Absolutely.
shifts
Sure.
through time.
I mean, every one of those guys I mentioned to you before, Leibowitz and Rosansky, Buddy Saunders especially.
Yeah.
I'm an old fanzine guy. I made
Yeah.
my own like mimeographed, comics and stuff, and stencils and things. I mean, everybody cared about being a creator. We all wanted to write or draw. We all couldn't. I mean, I'm actually in the comics business because I wanted to be a writer, comic book writer, but I wasn't any good at it. So I did become somewhat proficient at selling the damn things,
Yeah.
and and nowadays I don't see that kind of, I don't know if I'm watching some guy who's selling some new, letting you know what the new comics are for this week and why they're, the connection to a movie or a TV show. They don't
Right.
talk about what happened. I remember when I was 10 and, we were doing our own comics together. Maybe they were, but they don't talk about it.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's more, it's more framed into what's happening now than what happened then, or even understanding what it was like back then. But honestly, that's one of the reasons why Mike and I wanted to do this show too, because not so much to get into, like political discussions and different things like a lot of people do, but more to, be able to, give people the history, especially from the people who are actually, involved with it. And I mean, we've had like some of the, biggest, legends ever like on our show, which has been, I mean, it's been fantastic. And it's so cool because we've seen a lot of people like really learning stuff, and they'll listen to these people like Walter Simonson and all these people that like know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. Your Shooter interview I thought was great. This was a guy who was vilified. Okay.
Oh yeah, very much
everybody hated Jim Shooter. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a character, a personality in comics that was so universally hated by everybody. It didn't matter what you were, a creator or a business guy, a competitor, a retailer. Give Jack back his art. I mean, everybody hated him.
Yeah.
And yet now, I tell you, what a great interview, because I'm listening to him talking and I go, you know what? This guy wasn't such a bad guy after all. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
This guy, I mean, Chuck Rosansky and Shooter are very close friends. They were, he was the one guy who always defended Shooter. But what a great interview that was.
Oh, thanks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We and there's stuff like that we just loved and we loved getting to hear, especially that's the thing, like we said, because I was in that camp too, man. I hated Shooter especially when everything, I mean, I was blaming Shooter for everything, but then it's like when you actually do the research, it's like, man, he did a lot of the stuff I loved. Like he brought that about, and even just the culture of that they miss so badly these days, of having the editors actually involved in the creative process, making their editors also write a comic a month so they understood what the creative teams were going through, things like that like we, most comic readers would not even know or understand. But it's like, man, that made such a difference back then in the stuff that was, coming out. Whereas today it's like, man, most of the editors at these places, like they have a college degree, and they don't have much of a love for comics or knowledge of the process. So they have no clue what the creative teams are dealing with. And it's like no wonder the there's this disconnect, and everything kind of feels kind of disjointed, and it's just it's out of balance, because there's
there was a retailer seminar at I think it was a Chicago Con. It's got to be like mid 80s, early mid 80s probably. Anyway, but and Shooter was there with a bunch of retailers. Okay. And I said, Jim, I said, you guys brought back Dr. Doom in FF 200. Okay. Let's put it in perspective.
Right.
You guys brought back Dr. Doom in FF 200 and you never told anybody that it was going to be Dr. Doom in FF2 because they'd killed him again,
Right.
I don't know, a year or two before that, and I said, you brought back Doom and we all sold out and we all could have bought more copies if you would have just told us.
Right.
And
right.
And I remember his response to me was, yeah, we screwed that one up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and then of course they ended up getting Carol Kalish, and they started. She was the first retail liaison person, who's a manager of comic book shops, and then that started the whole process of communications with comic book retailers and stuff. So, but Shooter was the guy who started all that too.
Oh yeah. And I mean, for me, I loved when they started doing the Marvel graphic novels, and I love when they did the Epic line. And I mean, there's just so many aspects that he had his hands on, and like he said on the interview. I mean, and Mike said, I mean, he got the books to ship out on time, and for the most part, which was a lingering issue for I think Marvel and DC around that time when it just wasn't really, the books weren't really coming out quite as they should.
The dreaded deadline Doom.
Yeah,
that's the Doom.
That's what they call
it. Well, sir, this has been most enlightening. We thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Talking old comics. I mean, we get together as a group of us. We get together once a month. We eat sushi and talk old comics. And every once in a while, somebody will say, "Hey, did you read the new FF or something?" And everybody goes, "No." No, we didn't. But I decided to read the FF 48, 49, and 50 again because it still holds up after all these years.
Right.
So, thanks for.
Yeah, and I just want to so what all do you have going on, or do you have any? Are you going to be making any appearances or anything, or anything?
Well, being retired is really pretty good. I mean, right. I'm still, of course, buying and selling comics, but it's not really work. But I was Larry Sherritt, my old partner in the Comic-Con, Chicago Comic-Con, and I were asked to cut the ribbon at it's called Fan Expo now. I guess we sold it to Wizard, and Wizard sold it to Fan Expo.
Yeah.
And they asked us to cut the ribbon at the opening of the show last September or August, whatever it was. And that was really kind of cool, because we got we had, I think it was Darth Vader on one side and a stormtrooper holding the ribbon on the other. And we had big scissors and we cut the ribbon opening the show. But I think that was probably my last appearance going to do anything. So, but I know there's the C2E2 coming up here in Chicago in a few weeks. Yeah. But that's in McCormick Place, and I live in the northwest suburbs, and going down to the city is just such a hassle now.
Oh yeah,
it's just a pain in the butt. So
Chirac,
but it is Chirac.
That's what my friends call it now that live up there.
That's right. And so I enjoy my being able to buy and sell comics, and I'm the most blessed guy you're going to have on your show for a long time. So, but thank you so much, Jeff. Nice to meet you, and Mike, good to see you again after all this time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and definitely go visit his site, moondogbuyscomics.com. Right?
Correct.
Cool.